Well, I'm going to shift gears a little bit, cover a lot of what Nathan already talked about actually, but I'm going to talk more about Xtend cotton. And with the onset of this technology, I think Bill said in our state last year 60% of our acres plus or minus was an Xtend cotton acre. And so why the talk on no tank mix options? So previously we've done a lot of work, I mean tons of work with these Xtend crops, especially Xtend cotton and list cotton. All of those had been with tank mixes. We didn't realize when we first got this label that we weren't going to have a legal tank mix option going into the growing season when the herbicide was available. So that's why I think the topic's important, and that's kind of what I want to cover. But you know, this is just a standard slide I give in every presentation just to kind of spread awareness. These are our PPO resistant Palmer pigweed counties, and these are going to increase more than they are right here because we're continuously screening more samples in the greenhouse. So we're up to 7 states that have PPO resistant Palmer amaranth, and I'm not showing any data on that particularly here, but what I can tell you is it's like Nathan said, Reflex pre-plant was our #1 Preemerge weed control program in cotton for glyphosate resistant Palmer amaranth. But in these plots where we put it on PPO pigweed, we're getting at best 50% control. So it's just not, as he said, I don't feel like it's worth an extra trip to make that application. So that's the only, you know, that's really the only thing we've changed in our recommendations off of glyphosate resistance, at least in cotton. And so we're moving that Valor up, like he said, into an early pre-plant burn down for horse weed control, and it still has a lot of fit there. But anyway, the point I wanted to make here is anywhere these orange states occur, or however we fill it in from here on out, that pigweed is a different animal, so to speak. It's harder to kill with anything. We have theories about why. We feel like there's more metabolic resistance issues that could be going on, which causes an increased tolerance with several herbicides, okay? But all I can tell you is where we do our own farm plots with PPO resistance, that data doesn't necessarily match when I go on station at Mariana where I don't have it, or at Roar where I don't have it. I get a lot better control with everything where I don't have PPO resistance. So be watching your fields and know where it is. You know, try to prevent it if all possible from moving in. I know that's hard to do, but like Nathan said, if we can do a pretty good job, it may just cost us $5 an acre to rogue and get those some of those plants from producing seeds. So that's what we want to do. I'm just going to quickly run through this. This is our standard program, guys, that we've recommended since glyphosate resistance started occurring, and it starts with gramoxone or paraquat here at planting with a Preemerge. And, you know, Cotaran, Break FX, Diuron, Caparol's what Nathan had. Any of those work right here. I'd say Cotaran's more common, but the idea is we're overlapping residuals, right, with a dual, a warrant, or an outlook here, dual warrant or outlook here. But we've traditionally tank mixed those with Liberty and Roundup, or Liberty plus or minus Roundup. A lot of people don't like the burn, okay? But we have that option. Well, when we move into these new technologies, we're not necessarily legally anyway going to have that option to tank mix a dual or a warrant in if we used an Ingenia or an Xtend-A-Max here in this window. Okay, and so that's kind of the purpose of my talk and figuring out how we're going to work around that moving forward. And this is a slide, I gave this presentation I think 3 or 4 years ago at this meeting talking about control and the good options in Xtend cotton, and over 840 trials, okay? Lots of work all across the Mid-South. Anywhere you see these bars up at the top, guess what? We were tank mixing early for control for Palmer pigweed. And that's the only way we can do it moving forward. I mean, really, when you really look at the best control, that seems to me the best way to, you get multiple modes of action, right? We're not putting pressure on one particular herbicide in that tank mix. And so that's what we were doing. That was our plan to have for recommendations. Well, we've talked a lot about Preemerge. Nathan mentioned Break FX. Now, I'm not going to spend just a ton of time going through each treatment. Basically, in this particular study, we use Clarity. We know we can't use Clarity over Xtend crops, but We just for comparison, Clarity followed by Clarity, Clarity followed by Roundup, Liberty, Roundup followed by Clarity, just different scenarios of using one then the other as post-emerge. But what I mainly want to show you here is the effect of the pre-emerge on that system, okay, where we're not tank mixing early post. So break FX, we've got pigweeds, the white bar, and we got 2 grasses, barnyard grass and cut grass. Just across the board, and this is 14 days after our final application, okay, so this is basically almost lay-by, the control we've got. Pretty good control across the board with the break FX system. Cotteran, you start seeing the numbers go up and down a little bit. Grass, control becomes more difficult depending on where you put the Roundup in the system, where you put the Liberty in the system, and the Dual in the system, okay? So grass starts going down a little bit. Pigweed, we can still do a decent job. Directs, basically the same story. Grass has become more of an issue with some of these treatments. And if y'all haven't forgot, we've been focused on pigweed for so long, but if you haven't forgot, grass competition is way worse than pigweed competition. There's no bigger yield robber than the grass out there in your cotton, okay? Competing with that cotton. Now look at warrant. You know, we don't recommend a lot of warrant pre. It is an option. I know growers in Arkansas use it. And it can be used, and in a good system, you can still get decent control, especially with pigweed, but you have a lot fewer options of orders to spray things, especially on grass. And the issue with warrant is if you spray it earlier, when the temperatures are cooler, you're not going to get the same activity as we would in a post-emergence window when you have higher daytime temperatures, okay? So I like it better in a post program than I do a pre-emerge program. But you can just kind of see the way those numbers fluctuate moving from one pre-emerge to the next, okay? And so, I'm gonna make sure I don't go way over here, which is possible. I'm extension. So you really can't tell this picture with the lights the way they are, but there's been a lot of talk about using DaCamber or Xtend as a pre-emerge herbicide in cotton, Xtend cotton and Xtend beans. And if you don't get a rain, it can look pretty good for about 2 weeks. You can tell by these plots are pretty wet. We got a rain not long after application. This is 1 pound AI of DaCamber, which would be 44 ounces of the Xtend, okay? And you can see, here's our untreated check over here. Doesn't look a whole lot different than that untreated check. They were just delayed in emergence by a little bit, okay? So that's pigweed, grass, anything you can think of is coming up in these plots. Break FX, that's still really clean. Now, I had a comment earlier, if it rains, it is expensive. But if you catch that rain, it is by far the best broad spectrum pre-emerge out there for cotton, okay? And Break FX is the one we use in Arkansas, or in the Mid-South mostly, because it has the Cotteran in it and the Fluoridone. The Break F16 is available in the Southeast. It has Fameciphin and Fluoridone in it. Again, the Fameciphin part for us, especially in Northeast Arkansas, is not bringing a lot to the table because of PPO resistance. And so the FX is where I think we need to be if we're going to look at these break products. All right? And so let's talk about post-emergence. And so I would say over 90%, well, maybe not 90, but the majority of our cotton acres get Cotteran now, okay? And so we got Liberty followed by Liberty, Ingenia followed by Ingenia, Ingenia plus Dual, which that's not technically legal because we can't tank mix, right? But on Pigweed and Morning Glory, it did really good. And then just various, Ingenia followed by Liberty, Liberty followed by Ingenia, and then our standard over here, Liberty Dual followed by Liberty Dual, okay? Palmer Morning Glory control. We can do a pretty decent job with a lot of these different combinations on Palmer Pigweed, especially. Now, this is not PPO resistant Palmer, which is a little tougher animal, but this is over 2 locations in Arkansas, do a pretty good job. What we see, though, is when we start talking about grass control, depending on what we use first and what we use as a pre-emerge, our grass can get out of control in our plots pretty quick. And so, again, anywhere we have Liberty and Dual, we're maintaining that high level of grass control, okay? Goose grass is a little harder to kill with Liberty. When we have Roundup in there, sometimes it's a little better, but But again, anywhere we're using Ingenia first, we're for the most part losing our grass control in those plots without being able to tank mix with Roundup, for example, okay? All right. And so when we look at yield, we talked about grass competition. I mean, when we don't have Roundup or a good application of Liberty, you know, Liberty's a fair grass material, but without a residual to help hold back flushes, it's hard to just manage grass with Liberty. You got to hit it the right stage, 2 applications. You know, our standard Liberty Dual followed by Liberty Duals over here. The Ingenia followed by Roundup plus Liberty did look pretty good there. All right. So the story is you really have to know what's in those fields before you decide which one you're going to spray first or second. Okay. And I'll just show you some pictures. So this was warrant free. I didn't write that on here, but Liberty plus Dual on the first post application. So here we had Ingenia at 12.8 ounces. That's hard to see. Most of that's grass. We have some broadleaves that are you know, bent over, twisted up, and here's Liberty Dual on that first application. Pretty good as long as that grass is small. You know, any of it's good as long as the weeds are small, right? Just about when we talk about Liberty, Ingenia if the pigweeds or broadleaves are small. What if we went Roundup Dual early? I hear a lot of people tell me, well, I'm going to go Roundup Dual on my first shot, then I'm going to follow it up with Ingenia shortly after. And it all depends on that timing of that second post application. If you wait too long, what have I got here? I've got my grass pretty much under control, but I had pigweeds and morning glories in that plot, and by the time I came back with that DaCamber application, I'm not going to kill those, not even with 2 applications. Okay? So you're going to have escapes if you're not careful working around these tank mix limitations. Here's an example of where I had Cotteran, Ingenia followed by Ingenia. I don't see much pigweed in there. What was in there? The grass choked out. All right. But this is what can happen, and this is a cotton field. I mean, how much barnyard grass do we really have in cotton for the most part? I mean, not a whole lot generally, but heck, when I sprayed 2 applications of Ingenia, it's like it released the grass in the plot, and it just, you know, grew shut with grass. And so you can kind of see what happens. All the pigweed over here, don't see any pigweed in there, but grass becomes a pretty big issue. Now, another scenario, Ingenia first, like we talked about, followed up with Roundup and Dual. Looks pretty clean, but what have I done? I didn't have 2 modes of action that were effective on the pigweed. So what do I have left? I only sprayed Ingenia once. Had I sprayed it twice, probably look a little better on the pigweed control. But I've got pigweed that's regrowing in these plots. And by now, how am I going to kill that? With the $5 acre chopping crew you're talking about earlier, all right? You're really not going to get that out of there without some hand removal. You can spend a lot of money trying, but a lot of it's just not going to work. And just to kind of show you our standard in comparison, which we can use in, you know, Glytol Liberty Link, we use it in Xtend, we use it in Enlist. This is our Liberty Dual, Warren or Outlook. It really doesn't matter to me which one you're using there. And then follow it up with the same. And to me, in our plots, what my data says, that's really still a standard until we were able to tank mix legally these DaCamber formulations with other products. And so Enlist, I haven't spent a lot of time talking about Enlist, but it's basically the same story. Pigweed control, all right, for good pigweed control in the Enlist or with Enlist Duo in that system, if you'll notice, we've either tank mixed with Liberty, Warren, or Dual here. Okay. Now, grass is not that big of an issue in the Enlist Duo system, at least right now, because Enlist Duo is a combination of 2,4-D choline and glyphosate. So the grass in our plots hasn't been that big of an issue in the Enlist system. But here's what we're talking about: Liberty plus 2,4-D choline followed by Enlist Duo. Didn't get in there timely to spray this plot because it rained and we were delayed. And so what happens? They get too big. At this point, you know, these technologies are not bulletproof. None of them are as good as the Roundup was before we had Roundup resistance, unfortunately. You know, we wish they were, but they're just not on pigweed anyway. Okay? So just to kind of summarize, if I could, You know, the main thing is, regardless of which one you're planting, if you're going to Xtend, make sure you have a good plan, read the labels carefully and know what you can do. Residuals are here to stay. Reflex is still a good option if you don't have PPO resistance, but in our PPO resistant areas, I'm backing off as from a recommendation standpoint anyway. Liberty Link cotton, we've been doing this for a while, that hasn't changed. If we're switching to Xtend, basically we've got to figure out when we're going to rotate DaCamber formulation like Ingenia or Xtend and the Liberty. I mean, we're just based on the situations, when, you know, field by field basis. If we're going to enlist, you know, still need residuals. The tank mix deal, to me, doesn't seem to be as big a deal, so we can't get a residual in there. And I like that residual early post, really, of dual, warrant, outlook, or whatever. I'm going to put our industry reps on the spot, because when anybody asks me how do I use these DaCamber formulations correctly, I'm going to send them Brad Cohen's number. Sorry, Brad, I just called you out there. Sorry about that. But anyway, to wrap up for Xtend, DaCamber's not enough pre-emerge. And can it help? I think it could help if we don't get a rain after we spray it. If you get that rain, you think about it, our plant back window for DaCamber starts after rain. So once we get that rain, the activity is reduced significantly from a weed control standpoint. You know, Liberty plus dual, warrant or outlook early is great. I think that still needs to be the standard. Regardless of which of these technologies we spray, I think that one needs to go first and get that residual out early and don't have to add an application. If we decide to do Ingenia here or Xtend or in the list system, Enlist Duo, then we better be prepared to make a third application. And the reason for that is we're not able to get that residual in there legally. And if you can't get that residual, you get another rain, guess what's coming? More pigweed, more grasses, more weeds. And so until we're able to put a residual in that system, you know, we may have to budget a third application to stay on top of this. Now, if you're doing a cereal rye system, that's a little different story. We've got more protection, and so that's why we recommend cereal rye pretty heavily in our programs. That's all I have. I wanted to bring something to y'all's attention, though. We're having a pretty big pigweed meeting. The Pigposium 3 is February the 28th at Forest City, Arkansas. That's my contact info. You can follow me on Twitter or whatever. But any questions? Yeah.
We used to use concurrent system.
You use what now?
Concurrent pumps when we sprayed in furrow.
Right.
And pre-emerge. So we got
Right.
two different sources.
Right.
Two different sprays.
Uh-huh.
That would technically be legal with Ingenia.
It technically, as far as I understand, yes. And I've talked to some growers that are thinking about putting an extra boom. And if you have a system that can work with that, I mean, that technically is not a tank mix from what I understand. And so we have had some conversations about doing that. And so that would change things a little bit. The thing that we're worried about is, don't forget this grass competition. If you're not able to tank mix residuals, be ready to come back quickly with another application before they get too big, because you're just not gonna kill the pigweed, and if you're using Liberty, you're not gonna kill the grass if it gets too big.
What are the chances of getting the tank mixes about the season?
I keep hearing positive things, but I don't know. I mean, I'd love to see some. Yeah, Blake.
Why are we trying to force DaCamber into this system? It's not bringing anything. We just spray Liberty and Roundup. Yeah.
You can spray Liberty and Roundup and dual or warrant or whatever and do it like we've been doing it. The only thing I tell you is, honestly, is when I saw the results, I like doing Liberty followed by Ingenia, because it seemed to give me a little better kill of the pigweed. And I like it from a resistance management standpoint. But, there is some baggage. I mean, you want to make sure you know what your grower has next to you. Off-target movement brings some baggage to that system. So I'm not trying to force it. Don't get the wrong message. I think what we're doing is working. But we need to get a little pressure off of Liberty, or we won't. And cotton gives us a good opportunity to do that.
I'm also down in where we got rice corner rotation, or pigweeds aren't a major problem for us.
Yeah.
DaCamber's helped us get the morning glory, so.
Oh, it's an excellent morning glory material. I'm excited. We're trying to get some red vine spots. I'm excited for what it can do for other weeds. You know, it's not, on the other hand, a prickly cider or tea weed material. So if you've got tea weed, it's not going to work that good. So. All right. Well, thanks, guys. Appreciate your attendance.
Thank you.